quote unquote unqualified. And after you've gone through that process, that's when they will determine whether or not you are actually capable of becoming a judge. So for my adjudication journey, thankfully, I broke in my first judging competition. When you break, that means you're qualified to judge. So I'm qualified to judge in many debate formats. For IFAT, that's an Asian format, which I will speak about later, and also JOFAT. And I was also an invited adjudicator for this competition called Eureka. So yeah, that's on my adjudication. Next slide, please. Okay, so the other facets about debating that is quite interesting is coaching and convening. What does coaching mean? So I am hired by other schools to coach debate for them to prepare them for the competitions that they want to join. So for my debating club in Atma Jaya, which is called Atma Jaya Debating Club or ADC. I am also an internal coach there. I personally help them prepare for future competitions. Whenever they want to train, I help them train. And whenever they need feedback or any kind of advice, I'm there for them to give them that kind of help. And I am also in ADC, the head of training division. Now, when you're in a club, you have this body of executives. You have a group of people in charge of keeping things running, of making sure everything stays smooth all the time. And I'm part of that body of executives. And my position there is that I am the head of training division, which means I'm in charge of developing any training lessons, any training plans, the competitions that we want to join into, the delegates that are in charge of like representing Atmajaya in those competitions. So that's my part in Atmajaya Debating Club. The next thing is that I'm also a debate coach at SMAK Penabur 3. So same thing like I do in ADC, I always help them prepare for future competitions. I make sure that they are well prepared enough. I make sure that they already know certain topics or have prepared certain motions. So that helps them in their debate journey later on. So that is all for coaching. Now moving on to the last thing, which is convening. What is convening? So when you are in the debate community, you have a lot of competitions, right? And the great thing about being in this community is that you can also hold competitions on your own. So you're not always obligated to join all these competitions held by other people. You can also have your own competition when you have like the right people to actually work together with you, right? So luckily, I was given the opportunity to become a convener for a national debate competition, and it was called Atma Open 2020. It was one of the first online competitions, and luckily things went so smoothly that we were considered the blueprint for the first online edition of NUDC, which was such an honor and such a huge privilege. And also I was part of the ProAms 2021 task force. So that is an upcoming national British parliamentary debate competition. So I'm part of that kind of organizing committee, and I'm part of the convening experience. So that's the gist of my convening experience, and that is all within like the debate community. So yeah, next slide, please. Okay, so after that introduction, let's get more into the meat of things. What are the myths about debate? So throughout my debating experience, so I've been debating for about like close to 3 years now, and I've encountered people that are afraid of debate because they think that it's so scary, it's so argumentative, it's so aggressive. You have to fight people with words. And I understand where that myth comes from because, yes, you are quote unquote arguing with people. But for me, it wasn't scary because I had a community of people being with me, backing me up. So, of course, the actual act of debating can be scary and intimidating because you have all these people like putting down your case, talking, and also like making sure that your case looks bad, even though it might not be. So, yeah, I do understand how it can be scary, but the part of what makes debate fun is the people. And I think that if you guys are interested in joining the debate community or wanting to join the like a lot of debate competitions, I think that it will be less scary if you guys join with your friends or the right people for you. For example, you can have your best friend join with you on like a single debate team, and that will make the experience more pleasant for you because you have someone that you're already familiar with and you're actually like traversing through this strange experience together. And I feel like in my case, that was the one of the things that helped me overcome my fear of debating. And when it comes to like the act of actually debating and you feel scared because people are like always putting you down, always like talking bad things about your case, I think over time you will eventually gain that bravery and you will gain that tenacity to actually make sure that you do the same to them. Like you stand up to them, that you are brave enough to speak your own thoughts, your own opinions. And I think that's one of the valuable lessons that you can actually gain from debating. So don't worry, debating is not scary. You have people that always support you. Personally, for me, it was very easy to join the debating community because I was in a debate club. So I had a lot of people that supported me and also, yeah, helped me gain that kind of happiness and joy from debating. So I hope that if you guys want to join debating someday, you guys have that opportunity to also do it with your close friends. Now, the second thing is about having fluent English. So, fluent English is not a must in debating. When you are a debate judge, you don't judge someone's speech based on how sophisticated their English is or how exquisite their vocabulary is. It's not about the fluent English. It's more about the content of your speech. What kind of logical links have you brought? What kind of arguments that are relevant that you have brought into the debate speech? And what kind of ideas that are contributing towards the advancement of the debate? So these are the more relevant ideas. And English is basically just like a vessel to communicate your thoughts and your case. So if you guys feel scared that, oh, I can't debate because you need to have like people yapping in English all the time, that's not the case. I've had friends and also like people that I've known that joined English debate with like zero English exposure and they turned out fine because through practice you will eventually gain more vocabularies, more knowledge about English. So don't worry if you feel like your English is insufficient, you can still join the debate world. And also, if you like are fluent in English, that is a huge plus because that means you'll be able to communicate your ideas more clearly, you'll be able to illustrate things better, you'll be able to be more descriptive about your case and your arguments. So if you are fluent in English and if you're interested in joining the debate, please do because that's going to help you a lot in the future. So also side note real quick, if you guys have any questions, just save them for later. We'll have like a quick Q&A session. So yeah, just jot down your questions first and I'll help answer them later. Okay, moving back to the slide. The third myth about debate is being an expert in many topics. So if you guys don't know, when we debate, we talk about all sorts of things. We talk about politics, we talk about law, we talk about the criminal justice system, business, economics, social movements, a lot of things, a whole lot of different things about society. And there's this myth that suggests that you need to be a real expert in these topics first before you can even think about joining a debate competition. That, my friends, is false. You can join a debate competition when you literally know like nothing, which is what I did. I didn't know anything about debate, but I went ahead and joined anyway. Why? Because debating is actually the perfect platform for you to become an expert in many topics because it exposes you to so many things. You don't really talk about like the consequences of a certain policy in like a forum or in like a classroom, right? You're discussing about so many things that you didn't even know like existed before or was even an issue before. And for me as a rookie debater back then, that was so interesting because I was exposed to so many new things. I learned about so many new areas about society. Like I didn't even know like about social movements or about the intricacies of like US politics or like the consequences of like certain environmentalism acts, or even like what a company should do when it becomes like a huge company and it's like duty to serve society. So there are a lot of things to unpack when you debate, and you completely don't need to be an expert in all of those things to join debate. You can learn as you go. And it's very helpful for you to learn as you go because you're always like increasing your knowledge day by day. So yeah, no need to be intimidated by that. You can always learn. You have like hopefully a lot of friends that are willing to learn with you as well. So the last myth, you need a lot of experience. Absolutely false. You really don't need a lot of like previous high school or maybe like middle school debating journey. For me personally, I joined debate at like in my first year of university, and I went to like my first debate competition not knowing anything. And yeah, I turned out fine because I already trained before, I already practiced before. And I feel like that's a huge part of like the debating experience. You will always practice, you will always train yourself to become a better delegate. So as long as you practice and do your best, you are going to be fine. And it's completely okay if you don't like achieve anything in your like first few competitions. Find something fun about debate that's not about winning. So that something can really motivate you to keep going, and that will also motivate you to gain more experience in like joining competitions or practicing with more people. So yeah, that's one of the great things about debate, and you really don't need any kind of like prior experience at all. Feel free to join and just like yeah, try something new if you want to. So that's all for the myths of debate. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's talk about why is debating important. There are a lot of things that makes debate important for me, but I'm just going to share a few with you guys. So the first thing is more knowledge. The more you know, the better. I've mentioned about how debate is an activity that exposes you to a lot of things, right? And I think that's one of the most direct benefits that you can get from debating. You immediately know that an issue is an issue because of ABC, or this actor or this kind of person in society is important because of A, B, and C. For me personally, the knowledge that I've gained about debating is way more than I expected. I didn't expect to know a lot about politics or even like economics or even like the intricacies of like health policies or even like what we should do when we're in a pandemic, so on and so forth. So there are really a lot of things to unpack. We don't always debate about the same thing. We always debate in rotation. So if we debate for about like education in one session, we will debate about religion in the next. If we debate about social movements here, and then afterwards we'll debate about international relations. So that kind of variety really helps you to learn more about the world, to really open your eyes and open your mind to find out more things that exist in society. And I feel like that's going to be really great for you guys as well, which I will talk about in the next slide, please. Okay, so how is having more knowledge relevant for you guys as students in school? So the first thing is that you can find your interest and passion. Since you guys are still in school, you guys might be figuring out a lot of things. Some of you might already have a passion. Some of you might already not know what you guys are doing or what you're about to do in the future, or you like might not even know what you want to do or what your hobbies are. So I feel like by having this kind of experience in debate, by knowing more about the world in like arts, politics, law, so on and so forth, you can actually find your interest. You can find something that you're passionate about. For example, if you're like debating about economics and then suddenly you feel like, hey, this is interesting, I didn't know that we could make like money this way or talk about like economics in this way, that can be a gateway for you to actually find your interest in the future. For example, if you do feel like that way about economics, you might be more interested to learn about economy in the future, or you might even consider that to be like your college major going forward. So that's one of the interesting things about debating, that really can like open your mind and make sure that you can explore as many things as possible. And then you can just like pick and choose which one is more interesting for you to learn more, to delve deeper into. And I feel like that's going to be really beneficial for you guys, especially since you are in school, to actually find a topic that you really click with. And the second benefit is deciding your path for the future. So you might actually learn a lot about things through debating that can be applied to like your college journey or to your like working experience later. For example, if you learn more about the criminal justice system, you might like spark an interest in that kind of thing, and that will kind of like push you to actually learn more about that and be more active in like voicing out the struggles of certain victims, for example, or to participate in certain social movements. And I feel like that's going to be really great because when you're in school, sometimes your future is like quite uncertain. So by dabbling into debate, by experiencing that, by being exposed to so many things, you can also like know which kind of direction that is more comfortable for you, which kind of area that suits your taste the most. And I feel like that's going to be really great if you guys want to go to college or don't want to go to college. At least you have something that you're already so assured about, so very certain in that that can become your future passion or your future interest. So yeah, next slide, please. The second benefit is quick thinking. So coming up with arguments on the spot. So for context, if you join a debate or if you are a debater, you need to come up with a lot of arguments in a very short amount of time. So normally we will have 15 to 30 minutes of case building. So you will need to come up with a lot of arguments in like that limited amount of time, which can be quite stressful and can be like quite overwhelming. But it also has some benefits. So when you think about a lot of things so quickly, you are able to rebut things easier. You are able to become more creative. You are pushing yourself to your limits, like pushing your brain to really, really think and work. And that's really great and really applicable to a lot of situations in real life, which I will discuss in the next slide, please. Okay, so how is thinking quickly relevant? The most relevant thing that I have also personally experienced is better experiences in exams. So same thing like debate in exams or maybe in college exams, you are forced to think and give a lot of essay answers when it comes to your exams. And you will normally have only like 2 hours or less to come up with convincing arguments to persuade the lecturer or the teacher about your ideas and your thoughts. So when you dabble into debate and when you learn to think quickly, think on your feet, that really helps you in exams, especially when you are still in school, when you still have a lot of exams ahead. Good luck, by the way. You will need a lot of quick thinking skills. You will need to formulate ideas quickly. You will need to always thinking about the greatest solution to this or the best way to illustrate this kind of idea that I have. And I feel like that's going to be beneficial and make your exams really like more of a breeze because you won't need to think so hard and just be like, aduh, apa sih, gak ngerti, gak ngerti. You will be more able to analyze things easier. And yeah, I think that's quite a great benefit because you also saving time and energy. You're also delivering your ideas more quickly, and being in debate really makes you get used to that. So the second benefit is better problem solving. So in your life, you're going to encounter a lot of problems, and in academics as well, you will be faced with certain cases or certain problems where like the teacher will tell you, hey, solve this, find a solution to this. Or maybe you will like join an organization or a committee and there's like an issue coming up, like, oh my God, we need to solve this kind of issue first before we can like go through with this event or something like that. And that kind of thing really puts you in a tough spot, right? Because you will need to develop a clear solution for that. And I feel like debate will really help you with that. Because when it comes to debate, when you are stating your case, when you're making an argument, you're actually solving a problem through your case. So I'm not sure if you guys already learned this or not, but when you build a case for debate, you will always need to think about the problem first. What's wrong with the status quo right now? What can be fixed in the society right now? And once you've figured out the problem, that's when your case becomes the solution to that problem. So, for example, there's this motion that talks about, oh, maybe we should make online school a permanent thing. So that kind of problem can be actually illustrated or explained by there are a lot of students who now don't have access to offline schools. There's a pandemic going on, or maybe there's like inaccessibility for underprivileged people. This can be like several problems that causes you to come up with that solution of online school. So that way your argument would be, oh, online school is beneficial because of one, two, three, because of A, B, C. So like that, in the process of debate, you're always constantly solving a lot of problems in societies through your motion or through your case. And because you already have that skill of identifying a problem and identifying a solution, that can make you guys easily identify the problem and the solution as well when it comes to your real life experiences. So yeah, next slide, please. Okay, third benefit, making arguments. You can convince and persuade people really easily if you can build a good argument. And a debate, a large part of debate is making arguments, making believable arguments that includes many contexts and many aspects. And that's going to make it easier to say to people that, hey, I'm right, my argument is persuasive enough. So that can also be relevant for your experience in school. Next slide, please. Okay, so how is making arguments relevant? The first benefit is more immersive learning. So when you're passively reading or listening through like a certain material or a certain topic, it can be quite a good learning experience, but it also quite detaches you from the material because you're not actively engaging your brain or your mind with that material. So the great thing about making arguments is that you're actively pushing yourself to learn. You're being more immersive. What does immersive mean? It means that you are always thinking about the material in your head. You're not like trying to ignore it at all. You're always thinking about it and you're always pushing yourself to think more about it too. Like, for example, if you're debating about, let's say, like politics, you will think about not just politics in itself, but also like a lot of examples that you can like use in your arguments to make it more convincing. Or you can even think about certain principal arguments that you might have thought of. You can also think about certain contexts within certain countries that might be relevant to your case. So by making arguments, you're not just thinking about one thing, you're engaging with a lot of things and you're building those things and making them combine into one absolute case. And I feel like that's one of the most beneficial ways of learning because not only are you actively engaging with the material, you are also making sure that those different aspects of the materials are in one order, in one sequence, and that they all make sense together. And that's your whole brain like doing it in like such a short amount of time. And it's crazy because then it makes you like such more like persuasive speaker because you're already developing your arguments, you're already learning so much about it, and when you're delivering it, you just like you are able to convince people easily, right? As long as your like arguments are like well made and like the logical links are filled, then you can persuade people. But also don't worry about like not making very good arguments from the start because it is a learning experience. Everyone starts from the ground up, so Don't be afraid to make mistakes and always trudge on, even though you think like your arguments are not at your best yet. So that's completely okay. The second benefit is better critical thinking. What does critical mean? When someone says something to you, or when you're reading about something, you're not like just accepting it and just saying yes to it. You're not like just terima mentah-mentah the material. What's the English for that? But you're just like not easily persuaded. When you're in a debate, you always need to question what your opponent is saying. You have to think like, what are they saying? Is that true? Are they really serious about that? That kind of process is really useful because that makes your case feel stronger. And when you implement that in your real life experience, anytime you like read an article, you are always becoming critical to it. You don't think like that one article or that one material is like the source of absolute truth. You will always be critical and think about things like, hey, is this true? Is this correct? And then you can also like get more information from other sources like, hey, is this thing true? And that makes you more critical and more judgmental of things in a good way, because that means you are developing your own worldview about the world. You're not just like accepting what other people are telling you to think. You are able to think for yourself. You are able to form your own opinions. And I feel like that's a huge thing to actually like implement in your life, because it gives you a real sense of originality. You can really make an opinion your own when you are critical about things. You can learn so much through that. And you can also like give your own thoughts about things, which is really great. So yeah, that's the second benefit. The third thing is better negotiating skills. So when you're in school, I don't think you will encounter much negotiating experience unless you're involved in like some sort of organizing committee, which is something that is really great because you'll be able to persuade people about your contracts, for example, or your terms, or what kind of event that you want, etc. And by making an argument, that's going to make it easier for you to negotiate with people. You are able to show them what you want really easily. You are able to show them that what you want is good and beneficial also for them. And that's going to make the chances of your event, let's say, getting accepted or getting the green light really easy. So that's the third thing. And also this can be like a lot like relevant when it comes to college, when you guys might decide to go to college later. So when you are in college, you will need to like do a lot of negotiating with a lot of parties, for example, like lecturers or maybe external parties when it comes to like your event, or even your opponent, let's say in debate. So that's going to be really great for you. You can make sure that they understand you and you can convince them even better. So yeah, that's how it's going to be relevant for you guys. Next slide, please. The fourth one. So this might be quite an unusual benefit. Why is debate important? More confidence and humility. When you debate, you get really confident, right? Because you are presenting your case. You have good arguments, and then you suddenly win a debate round. That just like puts you in like an all-time high. Like, oh my God, I'm a debate winner. That feels really great. And that makes you really confident because you are doing well. You are deemed smart enough, quote unquote. You are deemed logical enough. You have a tight case. You have a really good way of presenting your arguments. And having that kind of experience to build something from the ground up, connecting all those contexts and putting it all together in a single case is something that is really great. And it makes you really confident because you're doing that for each round, right? So it makes you have this big sense of an accomplishment. You're always creating a case every single round about so many things. And when you think about all that, it just makes you really confident about how far you've gone through from like the start of your debate career up until now. But also, it really humbles you at the same time. How? you meet a lot of people when it comes to the debating community. So it's just like not about you, it's about other institutions that are also sending their debate teams into debate competitions. And they're also debating just as you, they're becoming your opponents. And it's really such an interesting and a rewarding and a humbling experience because you get to see all these people who are so talented at what they're doing, who are such great debaters. And it really makes you feel humbled because then you know that, yeah, even though I'm smart, I'm still not the smartest. And that kind of humility will actually be beneficial for you because that will push you to become a better person yourself because you are becoming inspired by these like talented debaters that are like champions and whatnot. So I feel like that kind of experience really humbles you. Next slide, please, how it's going to be relevant for you guys. So for the confidence, it's going to, of course, make you more confident in your abilities. When you make a speech like that, it's really like thrilling. Like it's such a fun experience. Like you're making speeches, you're like telling the opponent to like, hey, no, you're wrong. This is my case, blah, 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 blah. That's like such a powerful thing. Every time I make a speech, I feel really great about it because it's such like, yeah, it's such a fun thing to do. And it also makes me more confident because I'm learning so much. I'm going through each round with like fairly good results. And even if, let's say, I lose a round, I still learn something from it. And that helps me into like becoming smarter in the future and becoming more knowledgeable in the future. So that kind of thing just really boosts my like confidence in my abilities. And I think that will do the same for you too. Hopefully, when you decide to debate, you can really become more confident in like developing your case and like making speeches. And let's say you have trouble like doing public speaking, that's going to really help you boost your confidence in public speaking later on because you will have to make a speech in front of a lot of people, right? So that's going to be a great benefit. The second thing is about being humble, more desire to improve. So it's very important to become humble, guys. Like, don't think that you guys are the best at something. There is always room to improve. There is always like people who are going to do something just a little bit better. And that kind of thing should not discourage you from ever trying something, but that should motivate you to also become the best version of yourself, to always constantly try to make sure that this kind of craft that you're doing, this kind of thing that you're going for, is one of the best things that you have ever produced. So when you meet a lot of people in debate who are like so smart, who can like make cases or make arguments in just like the snap of a finger, it's really motivating for you and it really humbles you. It makes sure that you see that, hey, there's a lot of journey ahead of me. I'm not at my best like version yet. There's still a lot of room for me to improve. And I feel like that's going to be very rewarding because that's going to motivate you to continuously learn and like, yeah, expand yourself in any way that you can. So that's it for this one. Next slide, please. Okay, so after we've talked about the benefits, also side note, if you have any questions, just jot them down. I'll help answer them later. And we're going to talk about how debating works now. So we've talked about how like there are competitions, there are rounds, you have teams, and then you are able to debate with your opponents. But how does that exactly flow? How does that sequence work? So if you see the slide, there's 1 till 6, right? So we're going to start at the very top at number 1. So when you are in a debate practice, a debate session, a debate competition, you will first have a matchup. A matchup means knowing your position and who your opponent is. So that can be, for example, I'm the proposition team, and my opponent, let's say, is someone called Janet. So that makes me know, oh, for this round, I'm debating against Janet in the proposition side. So that enables me to know what kind of side that what side that I should take, and also like which kind of room that I should go to whenever I need to like do my debate in. So that's a thing in competitions. And the second thing is motion launch, knowing the topic of the debate. So once everyone already knows what their positions are and who their opponents are, they will need to undergo through the motion launch. So usually the judges will release the motion launch. They will let you know what the topic for the debate is. For example, like this house would do A or this house ban C, things like that. So usually this topic of the debate or the motion falls under a category such as law, art, politics, music, education. So there's like a big category and then like the specific motion underneath. So after you already know your motion and you already know your side from the matchup, it's time for you to case build. So case building means making your case with your teammates. You discuss with them for about 15 to 30 minutes, depending on the format of the debate. And in that time, you need to come up with arguments, you need to come up with potential rebuttals, you need to set up your case, so on and so forth. And once that's done, you go straight into the debate process. You deliver your case against your opponent. And when you debate, you usually do it diagonally. Yeah, secara diagonal. So the first speaker of the proposition team speaks first for about 7 to 8 minutes. And then the first speaker of the opposition team speaks second. And then once they're done, we go back to the second speaker of the proposition team. So that bounces around like that in that kind of sequence. So once the debate is done, you will have a deliberation time for the judges. So throughout the debate, you will have 1 to 3 judges or 5 judges, it depends, to watch your debate and judge your debate. And during the deliberation time, these judges deliberate together. They discuss who they think the winners are. And it depends on the formats too, because there are cases where there's only like one team that wins, or there are like 2 teams that are like ranked first and second. So it really varies depending on the format. But yeah, they decide the winner. And when they are done, they invite the debaters back and they announce the winner of that debate in a process called oral adjudication, or for short, it's called OA, or just like oral. And when their OA is done, then the debaters get to know, oh, which side won and which side lost. And also during the OA, during the oral adjudication, the judges can also give feedbacks towards the teams. They can also comment on why they think, for example, the proposition team is slightly ahead, or why the opposition team is better, or what the proposition team is still lacking. Details like that is included within the OA. So yeah, that's the general flow of how a debate works. Again, it also can be like different depending on the format, which I will like talk about later in the next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so how do debate teams work? Normally, you have 2 sides, government and opposition. However, these 2 sides can be 1 team or 2 teams each. The one on the slide is something called the Asian parliamentary format. So that means you will have 2 sides. One side is represented by 1 team, and 1 team consists of 3 people. So you have 3 on 3, and they just like debate like that. So for the government team, this is like the alternate name to proposition. So this is like the pro team, the one that supports the motion. They set up the debate and they always speak first. So the first speaker of the government team always speaks first, and then it goes towards the opposition team. So the opposition team opposes the motion, they give rebuttals towards the case of the government team, and they always speak second. So after you bounce around like that, that shows to you that the government team and opposition team always speaks like alternately in turn. But also there's this other debate format called British Parliamentary, or BP for short. It has 2 sides, same government and opposition, but each side is represented by 2 teams. So you have opening government, opening opposition, closing government and closing opposition. One team consists of two people. So you have like an 8 people debate with 4 different cases going on. That's a real thing. And that's actually the most common debate format used in Indonesia right now. So yeah, you have an 8 people debate. Your opening case needs to like be different from your closing case. So it's a real journey. It's a real ride, but it's also very fun because as a judge, you will encounter a lot of different arguments. You will be exposed to a lot of different logical ways of thinking. And if you, let's say, you are suddenly closing opposition, you will need to distinguish your case from your opening opposition team. And you will also need to like respond to the cases of the 3 teams that spoke before you. So even though it can be quite overwhelming, it can also be quite fun and challenging. So yeah, that's the most common debate format. But for simplicity's sake, we normally use the Asian parliamentary format too, which is government team, opposition team, 3 on 3. So yeah, next slide, please. Okay, so now that we've learned why debating is important, how it works in general, let's talk about some tips or some strategies that you can use when you do try debate next time. So the first tip that I can give you is to be comparative. A debate is about 2 sides. Explain why your side is better and the other side is worse. So that might sound extreme, but when you are in a debate, normally you will face like your opponent, right? And the way it works is that you can't just talk about why your side is good. Like, oh, here are the benefits, here are the good things that will come out of my case. It is good to talk about things like that, but it's not enough to guarantee a win or to like make a case really good and foolproof. So the great way about strengthening your case is that you can be comparative. What being comparative means is that you always have a comparison between each argument that you make. So for example, there's a motion called this house would ban cigarettes, let's say. And then you're suddenly in the government team, and then you make this argument that says we would like to ban cigarettes because we want to save more people. We don't want them to die because of health risks or because of lung cancer, so on and so forth, right? Comparatively, on the opposition side of the house, more people will more likely die because they will be like exposed to cigarettes. There will be more chances of them dying because, yeah, cigarettes is very bad for you. So things like that. So you can be comparative and explain why things will be good on your side, but also why things will be bad on their side. And keep in mind, when you are being comparative, please don't like ridicule your opponent. Just make sure to focus on the case and not the speaker. Even though debating is about like putting down other cases and making sure that your case comes out on top, it's also important to be respectful towards your opponents to make sure that this kind of debating is a very safe and healthy space for them. So if you really want to like put cases down, just make sure that you're actually explaining why their case is worse and not actually like ridiculing the speaker that brings that case. So yeah, next slide, please. Okay, the next step is to question what your opponent is saying. Don't take things like for granted. Don't, if they say like A, don't quickly think that A is the absolute truth. There might be some logical flaws that appear in your opponent's case, and it's one of your jobs to actually figure out, is what they're saying really true? Is what they're saying really important? So don't take everything your opponent says as something that is absolutely right. Question their stance, question their viewpoint. Make sure that you are tackling the most important issues within the debate, because there are cases where your opponent is talking about a completely different thing or bringing an argument that is irrelevant. So it's your job to make sure that the debate goes in the right direction and that you're the ones that bringing the real or the relevant arguments. So even if they're like saying something, always question it. And after you've questioned it, you make an argument as if what they're saying is true. So that's going to tackle their case in more ways. That's going to attack their case better, because not only you are questioning, you are also acting as if like their case is true, which makes it better for the judge to see that, oh yeah, in the case of this and this, it's not going to work because you said so. So yeah, that's the second tip. Next slide, please. The third thing is to choose one actor to defend. So when you're debating, it might get so overwhelming. Like you just don't know what to say. You just like you're so confused. And that's completely okay. The simple thing to do when you are really confused and you don't know what to say is to just choose one actor that you want to defend, that you want to talk about in your case. So for example, in the motion, this house would ban cigarettes, that means you are defending the people who are sick, who smoke, the smokers that suffer from a health risk, for example. And that's going to make it really easy for you because you can just make your arguments about that one actor. And even though it's only about one actor, it's still okay because that actor is the most vulnerable one. What does that mean? That means they are the ones are that possess the biggest chances of being harmed by a certain problem in society. They are the ones that need the most protection in the case of like the motion or the context of the motion. So if you pick the right actor and you make good arguments about that actor, that's going to help your case really go forward because you are able to identify their pain points. You are able to identify what kind of struggles they go through and how your case can actually solve those struggles. So that's my tip for you guys. If you guys are like really confused, just choose one actor, the one that you think suffers the most within that context of the debate, and just make your arguments about them and prioritize on protecting them through your case. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, the fourth tip is to make a goal for your case. Your case needs to evolve and lead to something, pick an outcome that you want to achieve. So when you're debating, when you're developing your case, you don't want it to be like stagnant and flat. You want your case or your arguments to achieve a certain goal. For example, in the motion like this house would ban cigarettes, your goal is to make a lot of people healthy. So that's why you are arguing about banning cigarettes. So there's always something that you want to achieve through a debate, whether it be like protection for this certain actor or certain outcomes for underprivileged people, let's say, or maybe more opportunities for people or better policy making by the government. There's always a goal, and it's up to you to decide what kind of goal that you want to achieve through your case. So when you have a goal, it's going to be easy for you to connect your goal with the motion. So for example, in the case of like this house with ban cigarettes, if your goal is to make people healthy, you can make an argument about like how you can make people healthy with like banning cigarettes. And then just let yourself think about that and develop logical links to that thing. And that's going to make your argument making process much easier. And it's going to make sure that your case is having a good direction, that you're not just like talking or debating for the sake of talking and debating, but you're actually trying to convey a certain argument and that argument is going somewhere. So yeah, next slide, please. Okay, that is all from me. Thank you so much, everyone. If you have any questions or if you guys are like confused what I've been talking about, feel free to ask. And yeah, I will help you guys as best as possible. So yeah, any questions?
Yes, I have. So, I want to ask about how to make a good cross-examination in debate.
Hello? Okay. Also, can you like state your name? What's your name?
Osi.
Ossie. Okay. Hi, Ossie. Thank you for the question. So
Yes.
when you have a cross examination, in the case of the debating that we normally do, the kind of cross examination that we do is a little bit different. So we normally ask questions in the middle of the debate, but we can't ask those questions unless our opponent allows us to. So that's just like the mechanism of the whole like cross-examination thing. It can be a little bit different. But the trick to do that is to make your question really short and concise. So don't waste your time talking about a lot of things or going on about a lot of context. Just make sure that your question is really precise and tackles the main concern of the opponent. So let's say like the opponent is talking about, oh, it's really important to protect this actor because this actor doesn't have any regulation that enables them to live happily. And then you can also like ask a question in your cross examination like, but we already have this kind of data, for example. We already have this kind of efforts by the government. Why do you think it's still important to protect this kind of actor? So that's it. You don't like go on and on about like the context or anything. Just make sure that it's really short and precise, and it also like tackles the main case of your opponent. So that's the tip that I can give you. And another thing is to make sure that you are like inserting your questions in a correct and understandable manner. Because if you don't do that, it's going to be really hard for you or hard for your opponent to really understand the question. So make sure that you formulate your question in an easily understandable manner, make it really short and make it really precise. So yeah, that's it. I hope
Oh,
that answers your
yeah, okay.
question.
Thank you, Miss Krista.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to ask?
I have a question. Or
Sure.
okay.
Can you
Hi.
introduce yourself first?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hi. My name is Namira.
Hi.
My question is, I think you said that when we're arguing, we need to focus on an actor.
Mm-hmm.
Where like yeah. So, but when you're rebattaling your opponent's argument or points,
Mm-hmm.
can you can we like focus because we're bottling, can we focus on their actor
Mm-hmm.
and saying why it's wrong? Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So thank you for the question. So yeah, you definitely can. So when you're debating and when you're making a speech, normally there's a structure to it. So first you start with a setup. That's the first part. And then you start with rebuttals, and then you start with your arguments. So this also ties in to my tip about being comparative. When you want to debate, you need to also engage with your opponent, right? So of course you can talk about their actor. Just make sure that you're tackling them in like a good manner. So that means you can also do it in your rebuttals. You can also do it in comparisons in your arguments. And as long as you also include an explanation of why, let's say, your actor is better or your actor is more vulnerable or your actor is the one that needs protection the most, it's completely fine. So just make sure that your explanation is balanced between their actor and also your actor. But most cases, in most debates, you are debating about the same actor, but the difference is you're debating about which way is better to protect them. For example, like a motion about banning cigarettes, like you can also talk about like the same healthy people or like for example the smokers. And yeah, it's really possible for you to debate the same actor too. But in the cases where your actors are different, just make sure to highlight like your actor is way more important and their actor already has the protection that is enough for them in the status quo or in the situation right now. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Does anyone else have any questions? Feel free to ask if you're still confused.
I have a question.
Sure. What's your name?
Okay, my name is Taha, and uh, my question is like if we are debate, like how to make the debate more fun or more challenging.
Okay. So for me, the act of itself is already fun and challenging. But to make it more challenging for you is to constantly think why. So in debate, normally we have arguments, but we don't know how to explain them or how to really put it into words. So the best way to do that is to constantly ask yourself, why is this important? Why does this matter in the debate? So for example, if you're talking about like the feminist movement, and then you come up with an argument, yeah, we need to protect women, but then you need to constantly ask yourself, why do we need to protect women? Because the thing about debating or about judging a debate is that a judge cannot take implicit things into account. So you really have to say out loud what you mean, unless the judge is not going to take that into consideration. So when you're debating and you're stuck with a certain argument, always ask yourself, why is this important? Why does this matter? Why do we need to do this? And by doing that, that's going to be more challenging for you because that pushes your brain to constantly think to the end of the argument. And also, after you constantly do that kind of wide process, you'll be able to expand your argument even more. You'll be able to like make a more complete argument. You'll make sure that you fill all the missing links that exist. And when you do that, that's going to make your case even better and more complete and more foolproof. And also, the second thing that I like to do that makes it more challenging is to think about the worst case scenarios. So this is not a must. You don't have to have like worst case scenarios, but I like to think about what kind of situation that is the worst case scenario ever in my case. So, for example, in a motion like this House of Ban Cigarettes, the worst case would be like the smokers are still dying, for example, even though we've banned cigarettes. And that really makes me think about how then can I solve this kind of worst case scenario? How can I make sure that this worst case scenario doesn't happen? So by thinking of that kind of worst case scenario, I'm always like challenging myself and making things more fun. Sometimes it's like so stressful. Like I don't know what the worst case scenario is. But it's okay because at least I'm doing it. At least I'm trying to think about it. And normally when you already have that kind of input from your coaches or from your seniors, you can also like think about the worst case scenario better. So those two things can be tried when you want to do debate next time. So think about the worst case scenario and also think about the why of your argument. Why is this important? Why does this matter? Why is this relevant? So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions?
So I want to ask.
Sure. What's your name?
My name is Makia, but I prefer to be called Max.
Okay, hi Max.
So
Your question?
Pagilang explained to us that when we're doing a debate, we never know if we're going to be on the team that disagrees or agrees on the topic. So how do you hold your bias back when you're on the team that isn't like your personal opinion?
Okay, good question. So I think the way to hold your bias back is to think not about you, but about your actor. So the thing about biases is that it's always about us, right? It's always about the way we think. But when you're debating, and this is like actually a side benefit too, is that debating is not about thinking, it's not always about what you think is best for you or what you think is best for society, but it's about how we can protect the other actors that exist within society. So that means debating is also an exercise in empathizing with certain actors. So for example, we have certain biases towards like, let's say, a certain class of underprivileged people, and it really like holds us back from developing a certain argument for them. But also in that exercise in actually debating, you need to like prioritize what's best for your actor, not what's like the way for you to think, if that makes sense. So I think the way to tackle these kind of biases is to always focus on your actor. Put yourself in the shoes of your actor, right? If you're talking about like, if you're debating about feminism, let's say, put yourself in the shoes of women who have been bullied for ages. And you think about yourself, if I were them, what would I need? What kind of goal do I want to achieve? What kind of interest do I have? What kind of protection do I need from certain parties? When you place yourself in the shoes of these actors and when you think about these actors really seriously, that's when you really empathize with them and also like think about the best arguments that will help them gain that kind of protection that they deserve. And I also think that that's going to help with your biases because you're not like thinking about, oh, I think that this kind of women is A, B, C, and D. No, but you're thinking about what is best for me if I were this kind of actor. So like that. So just put yourself in the actor's shoes and yeah, prioritize your actor in your case. I hope that answers your question. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions?
Who's next?
Me. Okay, so
Okay,
you said
hi.
that we can compare each other's statement, right? Is there a limit to that comparison? If we are comparing, is there a limit?
Okay. Oh, sorry, what's your name?
My name is Owen.
Oh, okay, Owen, thank you for your question. There isn't actually a limit to compare. Feel free to compare whenever you want in your debate speech. However, you also need to manage your time well, because if you put too much time into comparing, sometimes you forget about expanding your case and delivering your arguments. So the trick to that is to constantly practice and to find which duration works best for you. So, for example, I normally time myself whenever I do my debate speeches, and throughout my speech, I take a glance at the timer. If I go overboard, that means I just like need to move on to the next thing. So normally when I debate, I also have like comparisons to say, and I also have like certain arguments to say. And normally I give myself like a few minutes for each of them. So let's say I'm talking about this comparison, but I'm already over time. Like I gave myself 3 minutes to talk about it, but now it's like 4 minutes. So I need to drop it and move on to the next thing. Why? Because normally there are a lot of things that you need to talk about, and certain things are more important than others. So you really need to like categorize your time well. So the trick to do that is to like just practice and time yourself and make sure you strategize well when you want to give your debate speech. So I hope that answers your question. Does anyone else want to ask?
Who's next? I think Charma has a question, right, Charma?
Okay.
I'm actually thinking.
What is it?
I'm thinking.
Thinking? You don't want to ask a question that you prepared yesterday?
Ooh.
I think your question is good, Charma, the one that you prepared. You can ask that.
Yeah, don't be afraid to ask.
That's the first
It's
thing
chill.
that Katata showed the slide.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is it my name? What are you going to ask? It's okay. You can ask.
Faiza?
It's okay to ask.
Should I ask? Okay. Hello, my name is Faiza. I want to
Hi.
ask. In certain times, there's like when you are not sure with your arguments, but you have to like talk about it anyways. Right? How do you make yourself? How do you convince yourself that the argument is enough for other people, or is it like strong and valid?
In many cases, sometimes that doesn't happen? Like you always feel this certain dread that, oh my God, this is not going to be enough. The opponent is going to like destroy me for this. But what keeps me like thinking this is enough is to really utilize my time well during case building. So I don't know what kind of debate format that you guys have tried before, but for me, I always practice with my teammate for like case building things. So for 15 to 30 minutes, we usually like we usually like strategize. So for example, for the first few minutes, we would stay silent and just like focus on our thoughts. But then the next few minutes, we would like strategize, come up with certain arguments, and then we would utilize the rest of the time to like expand our arguments on our own. So through that kind of preparation of case building, that really makes me like assured that, oh yeah, I'm already thinking of these kind of aspects of my argument. So therefore that should be enough. And in the cases where it's not enough, there's always time for you to develop your case in the middle of the debate. So it's not like you're not allowed to talk with your teammate throughout the debate, right? You can always communicate with them. You can always like chat with them throughout the process. And even in offline debates, you are sitting like on the same table as them. So you are free to like swap notes or whatever. So throughout that process, we normally just like develop our case that way. And even if like it's like the worst case ever, I still think that it's going to be valid because at least I've already tried, because at least I've already attempted. So the thing about debate is that you're always going to experience this kind of pressure that you need to bring the best case. You need to bring like the most impenetrable case possible. But that's not always going to happen, right? You will have your low days, you will have like days where your brain really can't process anything. So I think the best way to make sure that you are always confident with your arguments is to find something in debate that makes it fun for you apart from winning. So for me, like it changes throughout the seasons of like my debate journey, but for now it's just like debating with my friends. That's like what's fun for me. So if you constantly just like focus on arguments that are valid, that can like take quite a toll on you. So yeah, I think that's the best way to tackle that. Just make sure that you always feel confident regardless of your arguments, because if you tie your confidence with like your arguments, that's going to like end bad for you if you suddenly lose or something. So yeah, find something fun rather than that. And of course, it's always going to be a practice. Like you're not going to feel good at certain days, but yeah, it's important to practice. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Thank you. Does anyone else want to ask?
Who's next? I think Fabian, you have a question about the competition, formal debate
yeah.
competition.
So my name is Fabian,
Hi, Fabian.
and my question is, what's the duration of the informal competition?
The duration of what? Sorry.
The duration of the debate informal competition.
Oh, okay. So thank you for the question, by the way. Good question. The duration of a debate varies. So when you are in like a 3-on-3 debate where 3 people are talking, it takes about like one to 1.5 hours. But when you are in a British parliamentary debate, when you have like four people on one side, 4 people on the other, it takes like probably 2 hours.
Okay.
Yeah. But when you are in a formal debate competition, you don't just debate for 2 hours and that's it. You debate for like the whole day. So normally in formal competitions, you have at least 2 rounds each day. So that means 2 rounds of like at least 1.5 hour and also like 30 minutes of case building at the max. So that's like 4 hours, 5 hours ish. And there are days where you have like 3 rounds a day or 4 rounds a day. And that takes from like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So it varies between each competition. So that's about it for one round. I hope that answers your question.
Okay. Thank you.
Maybe we should do that one from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Well, if you guys are up for it.
And you're up for it. Okay. And how about who's next? Who wants to volunteer to ask questions?
Iya, jangan malu, nggak apa-apa kok.
Dina has a question
Santai
about
aja.
public speaking because Kanata is one expert in public speaking. So go ahead, Jen.
Ada yang mau nanya nih.
Hello.
Yes, hello. What's your name?
Jenna.
Okay, hi Jenna. What's your question?
How do you feel confident if you speak in the public?
Sorry, I can't quite catch you. Can you say that again?
How do you feel confident when you speak in the public?
Oh, okay. When you like give your speech, right? Huh. Normally I just do it. Apart from like to be confident about it, I think you really need to practice a lot and you need to find a style that suits you. So for like giving a speech in debate, normally people have different structures. Normally people say their rebuttals at the end. Normally people say their rebuttals at the beginning. So I think the way to increase your confidence is to find a structure that you feel most comfortable with, to find also a way that makes you more comfortable. So for me, that means like setting up the debate first, rebutting first, and then giving my arguments last. Another thing that helps make me confident is to always think to myself, I'm the smartest person in the room. I'm the smartest person in the room. Like I constantly tell myself that, even though I feel the opposite, even though I feel like, oh, this case isn't going to work. My opponent is too smart. I'm just like the dumbest person ever. But I always think to myself, like, no, hey, you got this. You're so smart. And yeah, that gives me like a lot of confidence in doing my speech. And also the third thing is to make sure you have good chemistry with your teammate. Remember that you are not debating alone, guys. Like you have your teammate, and just make sure to always constantly support your teammate. Make sure that your teammate also supports you. Normally when I debate with my teammate, we always encourage each other before our speeches. We always like, hey, good luck, bisa kok, semangat, ayo hajar-hajar gitu. So that really puts me in like such a good mood. Like, okay, if all else fails, at least I have my teammate. At least we fail together. So that really reassures me. And also, I think it's really good to have a good support system when you are practicing debate, because to feel confident with your speech, you really need that kind of support coming from like your friends or your coaches. So make sure you surround yourself with good people who always encourage you, who always say that, hey, of course you can make a good speech. Of course you can do this thing well. I think that's going to be really important too for your confidence and for your like self-esteem. So yeah, make sure you have good friends that always support you. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, does anyone else want to ask?
Who's next?
Can
Amira
I
again?
ask again?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, since maybe like if we're if how do I say this? Let's just say that I'm already confident with my argument and points, topic, reasons. So, but when I speak in front, I tend to stutter, and then it just breaks everything down. I want to know how you can counter that.
Okay, thank you. By the way, what's your name?
It's Namira.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Namira, for the question. So normally when we do our speeches, it's not obligatory for you to look at other people. So if you feel like you always stutter and you feel nervous, just focus on your paper. Like you can like use a real paper, or in the case of online debate, you can use like Google Docs or Word. So just make sure that on your paper, you already type like all your arguments like in really good detail. So I feel that helps me when I too also like stutter and become hesitant at certain points. When I write everything down really clearly and all I need to do is just to read it, it's going to like really help me and hopefully also help you to become more stable when you deliver your speech. And I think other than writing things in a really detailed manner, the second thing is to just also practice. I feel like there's no instant way to really tackle that problem. I think you also need to really monitor yourself when you practice. Like, oh, I started at these parts, but when it comes to the end, it was really smooth. So by monitoring yourself that way and tracking your progress, I think that's going to really help you to like become more stable and stutter less in the future. And also when you give your speech, like just think of something that makes you happy. Like make sure that you have like a vision of something that really calms you down. So that can be like a great help for you if you like start too much and you feel nervous. So yeah, that's it. I hope that helps. Thank you.
Does anyone else have question?
Silahkan.
Faiza?
Can I ask again?
Sure.
Is sarcasm illegal in debate?
Okay, thank you. I wouldn't say it's illegal. You can do it, but I personally think it's not the best way to give sarcasm because it won't do anything for your case. Like what a judge takes into account is the quality of your arguments and how your like rebuttals can effectively tackle the case of your opponent. So if you give sarcasm, that's only going to intimidate your opponent, which might work, but I don't think it will like expand your case or help it like advance more in the debate. So I think rather than sarcasm, just focus your energy on making good arguments, on identifying the concerns of your opponents and making sure that your rebuttals tackle it. But if you want to do it, then yeah, you do you. Just keep that in mind. Does anyone else want to ask?
Okay. I think because it's almost time for the break time.
Okay.
I think maybe it's time for us to say thank you to Kak Tata. And thank you for the insightful information. We all learned a lot, and I'm sure that we can utilize it when we debate. And I especially, I never thought about the humility aspect of it, because I know that when you destroy someone in a debate, you feel that high, right? But then you also, if the same thing happens to you, it humbles you. So yeah. Okay. So usually in CONNEXT, before the virtual learning, when we invite our expert, at the end we would take picture. But since this is the digital version, I think we should all turn on our cameras. Yeah, look into the camera, smile, so we can take a picture. Okay, guys. Tristan.
Okay.
Can we turn on our camera?
Wait, is it my camera on?
Toha. Yeah.
Yes, you're on.
You're on. Okay, guys. 3. Malakai. Oh, he's on his phone. Cannot turn on. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Smile. Okay. Okay. Once again, thank you for the insightful information. Thank you for taking your time here. It's been very useful for us. It's a valuable learning experience for the teachers too. Okay. Thank you, Kak
Thank you,
Tata.
Mr. Gilang. Thank you,
Thank you, Miss
everyone.
Krista.